in particular, speaking about the interest rate hike to 16.5%. What does this portend for businesses? Because I was reading somewhere that this was supposed to reassure businesses even better and also stem, as it were, the inflationary spiral.
Okay, thank you for having me once again, Uncle Yori. It's great to be here once again. And then good morning, Nigerians.
Thank you.
To start with, let me try and then break down some of these terminologies.
Sure.
The
for non-technical monetary people.
Economists.
All we know is have money in our pocket, but there are a lot of technicalities around this one. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Exactly. So when they say MPR, that monetary policy rate, otherwise called minimum discount rate, it is the rate at which CBN lends money to commercial banks. That's the cost of borrowing of commercial banks from CBN. So CBN also lends to commercial banks. So the rate at which they borrow from CBN is what we call MPR, that is monetary policy rate. So if the rate increases, automatically it increases the rate at which commercial banks gives loan to the public. So, and then when we say basis points, 100 basis points simply means 1% interest rate. Indeed. So when CBN governor said the MPR was increased by 100 basis points, it means they actually increased by 1%. So as at the last MPC that they had, it was 15.5%. Then they increased by 100 basis points, which is by 1% to become 16.5%. So the implication of this is that...
sorry to interrupt you. This is the highest that it has been since 2001, I'm learning.
Yes, sir. In the last 21 years, yes, sir. That's very right, sir. So the essence, actually, theoretically speaking, we always say that inflation should be below the MPR, because one of the ways of combating inflation. But to speak right now, inflation is over 21%. So does that mean that CBN will increase cost of borrowing to more than 21%? That is the rate at which commercial banks borrow from CBN. And we should also not be ignorant of the fact that the commercial banks will still add their own profit. So if they are borrowing at 16%, if they add 10% to it, that means the public, for instance, will be borrowing at the rate of 26.5% from commercial banks. So all this make cost of loanable fund more too expensive. And CBN embarking on this at this time, for me, it is a theoretical way of solving a practical problem. So as I said,
okay, wait a minute. I like the way you put that. Sorry, Doctor, I'm going to come back to you. You said you look at this from your point of view as a theoretical way to solve a practical problem. Maybe I'll come back and pick you up on that. But let me also use the opportunity to introduce Mr. Ambrose Omodian. He's a financial market analyst. Thank you very much for making time for us this morning, Ambrose.
Hello. Can I hear you? Can you hear me?
Hello, Ambrose.
Good morning, Mr. Ambrose. I can hear you.
Ambrose, we just said
good morning.
Good morning, Ambrose.
Yeah, good morning.
Okay. All right. So thank you for joining us. We're just learning that the Monetary Policy Committee of the CBN voted back on Tuesday to raise the raise to 16.5%, the highest it has been. The rate which we've just been hearing from Dotun is the rate at which CBN loans to banks. Now, what does this portend? Because I was hearing, and I'd like an explanation on how this is going to reassure businesses. Did you hear me, Ambrose?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, when it comes to... Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, when it comes to rate hike anywhere in the world, it has two sides of the coin. Once rate is hike anywhere, they are about to go call flow of fund, giving one instrument to the other, at the same time, cost of fund will also increase. These are the two things. And for the cost of fund, for the private sector, it becomes a very kind of a tightening corner for them, because the cost of borrowing will be high, and that also discourage expansion. And that's why most times when it comes to price stability management of central bank of any country and job creation, we need to balance the two, because once you increase the interest rate, we are about to create what we call contraction. and especially what is happening now globally. I think what CBN did yesterday, on Tuesday, was also in line of the aggressive rate hike across the globe. But the good thing here is that, look at our own economy. Because CBN want to control inflation, and this inflation is not just cost liquidity push inflation. This is cost push inflation, and that is why they're also taking another dimension of kind of redesigning naira so that they can all those money that are outside the bank cover to also come back to this so that they're able to use policy to control inflation. But as we speak now, because of imported inflation, because of cost push inflation, rate hike alone cannot solve the problem of inflation in Nigeria. But it's a good news that they said in the last 3 months, despite the year on year, we're seeing inflation moving to the north direction. We're seeing a month for month decline for the which also kind of encourage them to slow down their supply, not being the 150 basis point they did previously. But in that direction, investors or business owners are also going to rethink their business because CPI said before now that the non-performing loan of the banks has remained a bit heavy for them, according to them. But with continuous hiking rate, most of the private sector organizations might start defaulting for them to reach the banks. But I believe that the banks also have fortified themselves with a good risk management to balance things. But anywhere, any day, where there's rate hike, there's always cost of fund on the high side, and that also slows down economy. But because of the priority of Nigeria and election around the corner, I believe that in the nearest time, the CBN or the monetary policy committee to start also stepping down their interest rate so that the economy can have a direction of it. As we speak,
all right, I got to
I
got to come in now. I beg your pardon, Ambrose. Thank you very, very much. I got to come in now because I've got to go on a quick break. Do please stay with us. We'll be right back. Quickly darting back for cover now onto the subject matter of CBN raising the interest rate. Among the reasons we've heard is to tighten the rein on inflation. And my two guests, Mr. Oladotun Mabinori and Mr. Ambrose Omodian, on the program. Now, we've heard from both of them, and I wanted to return to Oladotun Mabinori because you were saying, especially against the backdrop of this whole matter about it would be reassuring our businesses, and you had said that you see this whole effort, I don't know which aspect of it, but I think, yes, we're talking about the jacking up of the interest rate. You see it as did you say a theoretical solution to a practical problem? Would you like to explain that, Dotun?
Okay, thank you once again, Nampiori. I said it's a theoretical solution to a practical problem in the sense that theoretically, as I said, we always say that inflation should be below MPR, or MPR should be above inflation rate, or at least it should be at par. But as we have it right now, our inflation is currently at 21.09, while CBN just increased MPR from 15.5% to 16.5%. It's still below. So then jacking it up, as we said, is increasing the cost of loanable fund. That is, cost of borrowing has increased. Then investors will surely find it difficult accessing funds for expansion. So why I said it's a theoretical problem to solving a theoretical solution to solving a practical problem is the problem we have in Nigeria, as the type of inflation we have in Nigeria is actually not a demand pull inflation. You only use MPR to tame inflation, to rein in inflation, when what you are having, as some countries have, which CBN, I feel CBN is copying, is that they are going through what they call demand pull inflation, where there is too much money in the economy chasing field goods. That's when you mop up funds, you mop up excess liquidity. Because increasing interest rates is like they are mopping up funds in the economy. So, but what we have visually in Nigeria is what they call cost push inflation, as as my other colleague said the other time. So, is what they call cost push inflation, where Mr. Ambrose, sorry. So, where inflation is as a result of cost of production increasing. And how do we do that? Look at cost inflation. If you check most of the products that we consume today, most of the finished goods, they always have their roots. About 70% of their raw material coming from the soil. That is, when agricultural produce when there is an increase in the cost of agricultural products, of course, that would translate to whatever goods that we want to buy. So when in the case where farmers cannot go to farm, there is decline in their output, and a case where the so-called anchor borrower is not working. What do we have? We will have what they call food inflation will increase, and once food inflation increases, it will drive the what's it called? It will drive the inflation itself. So for me, what CBN should have done is to go after the cost push inflation, to go after the cost of production, and by reducing, not increasing it again, because by increasing cost of borrowing, you are increasing cost of doing businesses again. And the consumers, the producer will still come transferring this to final consumer. So before you know it, inflation will still be tamed. Okay, look at it in the last MPC. They increased the MPR by 150 basis points, by 15%, by 150, that's 1.5%. So they increased from 14% to 15.5%. So what do we have in the last 3 months? Inflation has been rising.
Actually, they say from 11. I beg your pardon. They say from 11.5% to 15%.
No, I was even referring to the last one, from 15.5% to the 16.5% that we have right now.
Okay.
That's the last. That's it. So even as they are increasing, inflation is still rising. So it simply means that it's not taming inflation as we want it. So why can't we do another? Because we can't continue doing this, the same thing the same way and expecting a different result. So why can't we use another approach by going after the real cost of inflation that we have in this country, which is what they call the cost push inflation, by reducing cost of doing business in Nigeria, by making the environment more. Okay, sir.